Hello, everyone. It is just now 2 o'clock. Getting everyone in. Thank you for joining. And in just one moment, I'll get started. And I am going to share my screen so that you can see my PowerPoint slide deck. And then we'll get started. Okay, I believe everyone can see that. If not, please text me or text me. Please send a chat. All right. Well, it is 2:01. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar. We are here today to talk about the Community Services Block Grant. Just a general overview and then just a little bit about that request for proposals that is out. Okay. All right, so Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, we are a self-supporting nonprofit public corporation, and so some think of us as a quasi-state organization. Overall, we work with many different organizations across the state, and then we actually have 4 divisions. So we work within, or a Community Services Block Grant works within the Community Solutions Division. However, there is also a Contract Administration, a Housing Compliance, and a Housing Development Division. This looks a little bit like a busy slide, but I wanted to give you a quick overview so as you know it might relate to anything in the RFP. So our Community Solutions Division, we have all of the programs there on the right-hand side of the screen, and CSBG is one of those. And so if you see within our RFP, it was probably mentioned if you're an existing tenant-based rental assistance or emergency solutions grant or weatherization assistance program, that's what it's referring to. Other programs that we receive funding for, and then we distribute to subrecipients, or we are considered a pass-through entity for those programs. And so therefore, reminding everyone that we at KHRC are not providing direct services, and we do refer people who contact us for those resources to the providers of those services based on their needs. And we do have a map on our website, and someone needing help may click on a certain county that they live in, and it should pop up what service providers are in that area of the programs that we fund. So you can see there some of those large numbers there overall from the funds that we distribute to subrecipients. Those are some of the numbers that are listed in our recent annual report at KHRC. You can see that $12,876. That comes from the Community Services Block Grant. And we'll get more into that now. So I feel like I have missed a slide, but I want to do introductions. I am Marilyn Stanley, and I am the CSBG Program Manager. And we also have Moniece Crawford. She is the CSBG Program Specialist. We have Joan Hicks. She is our fiscal monitor for our full division. She does the fiscal monitoring for all those programs there on that slide. Very busy position. And then we've got Christine Reimler. She is our Community Solutions Division Director. And so she is over all of these program managers that handle these programs. We thank Christine for that. So what is a block grant? Well, block grant, considering CSBG is a block grant, The federal government awards each state a fixed amount of money to provide specific services for programs. So we at the state level, once the federal budget is approved, soon we would get an allocation for the entire state. And then we use that allocation to distribute funds to the subrecipients that provide the services. So Kansas does not have a state law for CSBG. Therefore, we use and develop every year, we update it, the Kansas CSBG Policy and Procedure Manual, which is on the website. This is overall what the CSBG priorities are. The purpose of CSBG is to reduce poverty, revitalize low-income communities, and empower low-income individuals and families. So anything related to that falls within CSBG. This is how funding flows. Sometimes it helps when you're considering submitting a grant application or proposal, that understanding how the funding flows. So that federal budget needs to be approved every year. And as some of you may or may not be familiar, we've had a continuing resolution for quite some time now. And there's always been, I say always, there's been some more uncertainty of federal dollars in recent times. However, we have a budget now. So what will happen soon enough, we will get a allocation letter from the federal government. And for the purposes of CSBG, that is Health and Human Services, Office of Community Services. So you can see it goes from Congress to the federal OCS, and they do all of this background work to do their formulas per state, how that's determined. And then it comes down to the state level. And at the state level, we do the same thing. We have a formula as to how the funds are allocated. Each state could be very, very different on how that works. And other states may have a state law that tells them how to do this. And then we at KHRC at the state level distribute to the eligible entity, as you'll see that mentioned throughout the RFP. And then we do all of the compliance and the monitoring and everything that's involved in that. And we'll go into some more details about that soon. CSBG does require organizational standards. So those land into 3 different groups. And within these, there are, I guess, subsets of each area. And also on our CSBG webpage of KHRCs, we have detailed guidance on what is expected for each organizational standard. If it is a private or nonprofit organization or eligible entity, as I should say, there are 58 org standards. If it's a public or government entity, there are 50 of them. A few less for the government entities. They're just a little bit different. But overall, I don't know if anybody has been through accreditation or something like that. That is what this is like. Each year, an eligible entity submits documentation to us at KHRC that they're adhering to each of these org standards. So with CSBG, then that's quite a heavy lifting. But for an organization that is already operating in all of the kinds of best practices, it's probably already happening. This would just be to document that that eligible entity is adhering to that. To be a CSBG eligible entity, you'll see throughout the RFP that it also requires a tripartite board. As you can see from the screen there, so it must be at least 1/3 consumers, 1/3 public officials, and the rest must be private individuals or groups. And the addition to this, besides tripartite board, it is best practice to have those board members throughout the communities that are being served. For example, we have agencies with 1 county. We have agencies with 35 counties. So if you, for instance, had a 9-member board of directors, then it might be best to have some board members from throughout your service area so they can be represented. This is a requirement. So if someone is on this webinar and thinking they might apply for this request for proposal, this is something that cannot be around. So it's one of the forefronts of being an eligible entity on behalf of CSBG. All right, so what are the requirements of CSBG at our state level? We must give 90% of the funds that we at the Kansas level receive to the eligible entities. We may use 55,000 or 5%, whichever is greater, for our administrative costs, which we'll go into detail about all of the things that we do at the state level. And then the remaining funds, that other 5%, we can use for discretionary funds. And some of you may have in the past seen that KHRC puts out a CSBG discretionary round 1 and sometimes a round 2. And this is some of those funds that would be available as discretionary. However, it must still be used for the purposes of CSBG. Okay. So those discretionary funds, it's also encouraged that eligible entities apply for those funds so that they may use them for other needs that their standard CSBG dollars do not allow for. So they can continue providing their normal, regular community needs services, and then the discretionary funds, sometimes they apply for it. Sometimes it's a website, sometimes it's a community needs assessment. It could be for a variety of different things as long as it's all applicable to CSBG. All right, we also at the state level, so we create the state plan, which if you're interested in this RFP, you can find our current state plan that's approved by OCS on our webpage. So that would be something that would help you to familiarize yourself with the program, is what our current plan is. We submit our plan every 2 years. We can submit it every year. We choose to do it every 2 years. And when this takes place, we do have public hearings and to provide input. We have little work sessions before the public hearing. We try to be as inclusive as possible with the network and all of the community as a whole. CAP plans. We're in the acronym world, right? So Community Action Plan, that's what that is, CAP plans. We consider this in Kansas as basically the annual grant application, because this is a formula-based funding. Once you're an eligible entity, you're expected to continue to be an eligible entity unless you voluntarily relinquish the funds, or if you happen to be de-designated. That would be a very slim or rare occasion. That would be if an organization was not able to comply with all of the CSBG requirements. So the CAP plan outlines what the agency or eligible entity is going to do for the upcoming year for services and programs. Funding, we handle that, getting that out, and with the formula. And then there's contracts involved. And then there's every month we do, our agencies do, a grant transaction report, or we use acronyms, GTR, and that is basically the reimbursement request. So within that would be all of the backup or support documentation for whatever amount of money that's allocated within that contract to be reimbursed. So that's sent every month. And then we at KHRC process those and keep track of it, and then send the funding to the eligible entity. We do monitoring. Monitoring is such, we do on-site visits to every eligible entity at least every other year. CSBG state law requires we do it at least every third year, but we do it every other year. And then monitoring, besides the visits, we're monitoring constantly here at the state level, those monthly GTRs, those org standards. There's a variety of different things that we're doing. We're doing an annual risk assessment and analysis. We're also to provide training and technical assistance. Sometimes this is a group session. Sometimes this is at quarterly check-ins with the community action agencies. Sometimes it is during monitoring or one-on-one. It's a different variety of ways that we can do that training and technical assistance. ACSI, that is the American Community Survey. Every 2 years, OCS, I believe they contract this out and they have someone initiate the survey, and it asks eligible entities how we at the state level are doing. It has a standard set of questions in each of the state's requirements so that the eligible entities can score how the state is doing. The results of those are shared with all of the eligible entities and discussed so that the state, Moniz and I, can do a better job at what we do. And oftentimes it's related to communication and expectations, those kinds of things. So those are always a work in progress. Everyone would like to always get a perfect, but this is almost like a evaluation, if you will. So it's very important to us. So you'll hear about that or see information about it. Then reporting. So eligible entities not only do the CAP plan, which sets out the goals each year, but they also do a mid-year report, a year-end report, and then all of that year-end data sums up into an annual report. The annual report is what we end up putting together and submitting to OCS at the federal level. And so that gives us a full picture of what we did with Kansas's CSBG dollars statewide. We're actually in the process of that right now. And then so overall state administration of CSBG is what we at KHRC do with the community action agencies, also known as eligible entities. So what is an eligible entity? Well, you can see currently there's about 1,000. There's this particular graphic there is just a little bit old. I believe there's just under 1,000 community action agencies or eligible entities across this nation, and 53 states and or territories, 66 tribes or tribal organizations. We have 4 national partners, which are excellent resources. If you decide to apply and happen to be funded for this eligible entity funding source that happens every year, those national partners can be an excellent resource for you. There are state associations. Not every state has an association. We do here in Kansas, and I'll touch on that in just a little bit. And you can see there for the 23 funding, we did CSBG overall had 770 million. So it's quite a bit of money, but you know, when you break that down per state and then down into the eligible entities, that can, you know, of course, be much smaller. So, okay. And noticing again that these can be private nonprofits, they can be public government entities, could be farm worker, and 80% of those currently funded are nonprofits. KCAP. KCAP is the state association here in Kansas. Jessica Wardowski is the executive director of KCAP. And if you become an eligible entity through this funding source, this would be an organization that you would work with pretty regularly. And I think Jessica's probably on this webinar here if you see her on the participant list, but I'm sure she'd be available for overall connections to the existing eligible entities. And we meet with Jessica about once a month just to talk about how we can continue to work together. And she tries to support the organizations that are funded and work through us. All right, so this is a map of Kansas, and you can see the color coding, and you can see the existing eligible entities. These have all been funded or been an eligible entity for a very, very long time, most 50 plus years. So in the beginning, if you wanted to go into the history of community action or CSBG, it goes back to years and years ago. They were agencies that were funded directly by the federal government. And then at one point, the law changed and became where the funding would go through the state. And those organizations at that time were pretty much grandfathered in to be a eligible entity. Kansas has been very stable. We've had the same 8 agencies for as long as we know. The 35 counties for this RFP, that organization has decided to voluntarily relinquish their CSBG funding and services, and that is the purpose of this RFP. We're seeking either one or more eligible entities to fill that gap for those 35 counties. Currently, we've updated our listings to say call 211 for help, the United Way 211 number, and whatever listings are available there. That's hopefully people have been able to find something. So hopefully we'll get an organization or more that will be able to handle those 35 counties. We appreciate you being able to join us webinar today so that you can learn more about it. You can see there in our last complete annual report data reflected from October 1, 23 to September 30, 24. Our 8 community action agencies served 12,876 individuals from 6,126 households. We're just finalizing the data from the next federal fiscal year, and we should have that available soon for those of you who are interested in following. All right, so hopefully you have read the request for proposal in detail. The team here has put a lot of time and energy into making sure that it has as much information as possible. So we did post it publicly on February 26th. We have our orientation hearing and questions deadline is today. Then tomorrow we will have our the questions we received and the answers that we are providing will be posted to our website. The application itself is due April 13th. Quick note on that, anytime you send an application to someone, you might just make sure that you get a maybe a read response or some kind of thank you back or something so that it can confirm that they did or we did receive that application. And then approximately May 22nd, we hope to announce that award. Submissions must be sent to our CSBG email inbox as you see on the screen. And please note that you must serve assigned counties with accessible locations. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a county in each of those, in an office in each of those counties, those 35 counties, but you must be accessible to those counties. So we look to you as an applicant to tell us how you would do that within your RFP. Also noting that there is strong administrative capacity that's essential if someone's going to be an eligible entity how do I want to say this? It's not just we give you money to provide services. There are a lot of requirements involved. So setting the expectation that you know overall what will be expected is important. Those org standards, that tripartite board, our manual, all of the federal government requirements, because this is a federal funding source. So do read that full RFP. Note that the application is in Excel. You can expand those boxes the best you can. If you need to go longer, if you need to have more text or content that it's currently set up for, go ahead and wrap that around and expand it and make it longer. Be sure to read and sign those CSBG certifications and assurances, and submit those when you submit your completed Excel workbook. There is also a single audit certification. And then we would like to have you include your 501c3 letter, if that's what your organization is, and your most recent audit or financial statements. Sometimes people say, well, we don't have an audit because we haven't needed, we don't have that requirement of an audit. We do want your financial statements at the very least. You've probably got a Form 990. You probably got your most recent organizational financial statement that you show to your board of directors, as an example. These are some resources. I just want to highlight them for you. If you're planning to apply, I encourage you to take a look at these. And so the CSBG state fact sheet, I believe this actually links you to the most recent annual report data and how it highlights the specific services that the Kansas eligible entities provided. The CSBG guidelines, there's some general information there. The federal government, which is Health and Human Services Office of Community Services, has put a lot of really great information there, and those guidelines link to that. Then importantly, our CSBG manual of policies and procedures. And again, like I said, we update this regularly. The most current version is posted on our web page. Those organizational standards, it's going to list all 58 of those and specifics on what we at the state level look for documentation of those. And this, again, you wouldn't be required if you, let's say you are not an existing eligible entity and you apply and you receive this award or some of this award, then you would not be required to do those immediately. We would give you a little bit of time and work with you in a reasonable time frame to get these things in line. So the Kansas CSBG service areas, that is that map that you saw on the other screen, and also the program areas served. There's a one-pager that says who the existing agencies are and who their executive director is and what counties they serve. They probably, or they might be available if you wanted to, if you're already connected or partnering with any of them, they might be willing to chat with you about opportunities and what CSBG is like. We've got our state plans, our staff contact information there. That will list myself and Moniz. However, for the purposes of this RFP, we do want those questions to only go to the CSBG email address. And again, questions deadline is end of today. So also currently on the web page is this request for proposal, this Excel application, single audit certification, and assurances and certifications as well. So once this RFP closes, those 4 items on the right will be hidden from the website, and we'll go back to the standard information about CSBG. All right, so I have in the slide deck, I've listed all of the questions and answers. So if you have already submitted a question, I would have replied to you stating that we will include the answers in the publicly posted document that will go up tomorrow. I do want to let you know, and I'm going to skip on down to the very end because I'm going to show a different document to you because I inadvertently picked up the wrong slide deck, which had the rest of the questions I received this morning. So I will go to another document shortly. But before I do that, I'm going to hit our closing slides here. Just pointing out that we do have a housing conference every year, and it includes community and economic development, housing development, housing compliance, and then some professional development as well. A lot of our existing eligible entities do, in fact, attend this. So, or they may have multiple different programs. They may be funded by ESG or TBRA or other things as well. And then before I switch documents, I'm going to show you this is encouraged if you would like to sign up for our mailing list. In our RFP, and information is also found at the bottom of our homepage under current announcements. So notating that. All right, I'm going to stop sharing just for 1 minute to switch documents. Please bear with me. And all right, and everyone is on mute and questions are encouraged to be typed in the chat. What we'll do is we will intend to not answer the specific questions that are typed in the chat during this presentation. However, we will add answers to those questions and put them in the question and answer document that will be posted by end of day tomorrow. And I'm going to bring up our current question and answer slide deck. And this recording and the slides will be posted in that same area. So if you're wondering, maybe a co-partner has asked you to join this webinar, then we will have that available for you to show them. And the recording will be as well. All right, so these are the questions we've received to date. So again, reminder, they must be submitted by 5 o'clock today to that CSBG email address, and we will post the answers. This is what we received to date. We will post them all by end of day tomorrow. Okay. And so far, what we've received quite a few questions, as you can see from the slide there. Can you tell me what audience this was released to by chance? Well, the RFP was sent to KHRC's full constant contact list, which includes 3,689 email addresses, and it was also posted to the Kansas Register. And we have a link here should anyone like to see that. After the initial KHRC constant contact release, some staff forwarded it on to, of course, the eligible entities that are currently existing. KCAP, the weatherization program contacts, emergency solutions contacts, tenant-based rental assistance, and then we picked out United Ways that are currently serving in that Western Kansas area. So next question was about board requirements. They were asking, we are interested in applying for this RFP. However, the structure is that they have different, the bishop appoints, and they have separate advisory boards. And they wanted to confirm whether it was acceptable for the board requirements in the RFP. Well, under the CSBG Act, which is the federal law, eligible entities must be governed by a tripartite board. This structure ensures community representation, accountability, and balanced decision-making within organizations receiving CSBG funding. And the requirement can be found at this link. Again, it's part of the federal law. So, whoever would be awarded this funding, one or multiple organizations, must have a tripartite board. Next question was about community needs assessments, which we have a few of those. Someone asked if we apply for all 35 counties, how many community needs assessments need completed? And they knew that some county areas had some community needs assessments, but they were maybe a few years old. Well, CSBG requires that eligible entities conduct and publish a new community needs assessment for the entire service area at least every 3 years. This is to ensure planning remains relevant and reflective of current conditions. So that doesn't mean that you could use other areas community needs assessments, but you would still have to do the other counties. So as long as all of the counties that an eligible entity is assigned to were serving based on the funding that is provided to them, then there must be a community needs assessment at least every 3 years. We've had some talk at the state level whether we could work towards, if it was feasible, to do a statewide community needs assessment. However, that has not been implemented yet. So currently, each of these 7 community action agencies have their own community needs assessment. A couple of them are using other community needs assessments, but they have just a smaller service area. So for instance, if you were applying for these all 35 counties, it's probably unlikely that there would be 35 county existing community needs assessments. So some work would need to be done on that. We are adaptable. We understand if a new organization or more are coming on as an eligible entity, that there will need to be a reasonable amount of time to get this community needs assessment arranged. So we understand that completely. And then once it becomes part of the system, it's required at least every 3 years. Next question, it was related to grant awards. They would like to know the requirements related to sub-awards or contracts to be explained. They're especially interested in these items being discussed at this webinar. So we tried to give a little bit more detail. First of all, thank you to whoever asked that question. And we wanted to cover it during this webinar, and we'll have it posted in these answers as well. We have pasted currently from uniform guidance. For those of you who are used to dealing with federal awards, federal funding sources, that uniform guidance must be followed. So here it's also quoted. So a sub-award means an award provided by a pass-through entity to a subrecipient for the subrecipient to contribute to the goals and objectives of the project by carrying out the federal award received by the pass-through entity. So yes, it is possible if, let's say, for instance, an existing eligible entity wished to subcontract with another entity. That is possible to do. So from everyone listening here on the webinar, just be aware that it's all about relationships and providing the services that land within the CSBG arena. And how that would work, here I've copied and pasted from uniform guidance. What is a subrecipient and what their responsibilities are, and contractor. In this circumstance, they would not be a contractor. They would be a subrecipient. And we later received another question related to this, so I'll give some more details shortly. Okay. And also, one of the federal partners, which is called CapLaw, has member resources available that have excellent guidance on nuts and bolts of sub-grant agreements and a sample sub-award agreement. These are just a little bit dated, a few years old, but probably still applicable. If it happens to be an eligible entity that's existing and they're thinking about doing this, then it would not probably hurt to reach out to CapLaw to get any current or updates to those kinds of things, so that you feel that your sub-agreement would be in line. A good model could be using KHRC's sub-award agreement as a model towards what you would be wanting to do. Next question. The next several questions were all within one email, and they tried to graciously identify what page number where they were referencing. Thank you for doing that. And so I tried to take a snippet of what that piece of the RFP was saying in case anyone needs to refer to it. So here they were asking about KHRC's procurement policies, where they're located, or if we just follow the Department of Administration policies and procedures. And they were referencing from this little piece on page 6 of the RFP, where it's stating all subcontracts will need to follow KHRC's procurement rules. And our answer for that is KHRC's procurement rules specifically related for this can be found in the Kansas CSBG Policy and Procedure Manual, section 9001, where we reference uniform guidance, specifically the applicable eligible entities procurement procedures. So each of the eligible entities have procurement procedures or policies. And so if an eligible entity was considering doing this, they would look at their procurement procedures and follow that to find their subrecipients. As long as it ties into uniform guidance, which is also cut and paste here. CSBG overall has been fortunate to finally get an update that we're tying in, Health and Human Services is tying in with uniform guidance better now. So if you see that referenced in any of the materials, that's what it's related to. So each community action agency or eligible entity must maintain a fiscal operations manual, and it includes things such as procurement. Next question was related to page 8 of the RFP. What does KHRC define as be operating broad-based in all designated county service areas? Excellent question. So first, we've got the snippet where it's referring to that. Basically, in short, that's meaning touching all of those counties. Doing something that's CSBG related throughout those counties. So my answer in text content is we defined it to be operating. We define be operating broad-based in all designated county service areas as ensuring that CSBG services remain deeply connected to the people and priorities of every county served, allowing the eligible entity to respond effectively to local needs, build on community strengths, and improve outcomes for low-income individuals and families throughout the full Kansas service area. This can include partnerships, linkages, and/or services touching each county. The next question was related to page 8 of the RFP. Again, the snippet is below of that section. They're asking about indicates services provided are consistent with the needs identified by a community needs assessment. They're asking, does this mean it could be a community needs assessment completed by a non-funded entity? And what is the community needs assessment time frame will be accepted? So our answer is, please see section 7000 of the Kansas CSBG Policy and Procedure Manual for details. Yes, it could be a community needs assessment completed by a non-funded entity, However, a community needs assessment must be completed once every 3 years. KHRC will allow reasonable time for the preparation of a community needs assessment for the 35 county service area, and we do have access to the former eligible entities community needs assessment. So whoever would be taking on any of these 35 counties, we can share some information to help get started, but another entity may want to take a different kind of approach to getting that community needs assessment. So we're open to providing technical assistance as much as we can. This is a snippet of that piece of the policy and procedure manual. And so it covers in detail what's expected of that community needs assessment. We also have already downloaded one of the national partners, National Community Action Partnership, or NCAP, provides a free, I guess it's a data assessment. So you can plug in the counties that you want information on, and it will download all of the statistical kinds of information for each of those counties. So we have already downloaded that for the 35 counties. So we at KHRC have a visual, or at least preliminary data on what is existing in those 35 counties as for gender, age, race, ethnicity, poverty levels, those kinds of things. However, the community needs assessment is more than just that data. Customer satisfaction, both qualitative and quantitative data, and then key findings of poverty needs. And here's where legislation allows the assessment may be coordinated with community assessments conducted from other programs. So I think this is what's been asked a couple of times. And like I said, a couple of our agencies with smaller service areas do use another entity's community needs assessment. However, they must be involved in that. For example, let's say a United Way for the service area is doing a community needs assessment, or some people call it their CHIP assessment. As long as the eligible entity is involved in that and has some input, that's okay. They may be attending meetings or community input sessions or something like that. If that's documented, that will suffice for those service areas. Okay. And then we make sure we have a community needs assessment when you submit organizational standards every year. And it must be within a 3-year period of each time. Next question, mentioned page 2 under geographic location. We struggled exactly seeing where on page 2 that was referenced. However, we tried to answer the question in general. Basically, if an entity does not provide CSB services outside of the currently funded CSBG catchment area, what would other entity-related services provided in the same counties for which application is being submitted be considered? So we will attempt to answer the question by letting you know to serve an unserved area under CSBG, an organization must be capable of addressing poverty, be located near the area, already provide related services there, be willing to adjust its board to represent the new area, and ensure its services align with identified community needs. And this is the last question that has been received so far. Again, it's not even 3 o'clock yet, so we may get additional. So what is required of the funded entity if subawards or contracts are utilized for service delivery? In this case, it would be a subaward, but if a subaward or contract are used for service delivery, the funded entity must maintain oversight, monitor compliance, and remain legally and programmatically responsible for the use of CSBG funds and the outcomes of the services delivered. So in a mini way, let's say XYZ eligible entity received, applied, and decide to subcontract services for some of those counties. They would need to do monitoring. They would need to make sure that that eligible entity or that subcontract was following all the rules and guidelines that you set upon them, everything in the contract that you've given them. Almost like what KHRC does with the other, with the eligible entities. Maybe at a little bit different level because you're not the main source, but everything, you're still responsible in the end for everything that they do. Okay, so those are the questions we've had. I'm going to take a look. We've had some AI assistants, and those may have been rejected from the meeting. Yes, the slides will be shared. I will post them by the end of the day tomorrow. We'll post them along with where the RFP is and near where the question and answers will be. We'll answer the next question about board on the question and answer guide. Oh, same with travel. And someone's happy to meet. That was Jessica from KCAP. Thank you, Jessica. She's put her email in the chat. And then is there a designated amount for administrative cost? Oh, excellent question. We can answer that in the question and answer document as well. Overall, generally speaking, for federal grants like this, eligible entities follow uniform guidance, which uniform guidance allows for a federal indirect cost rate, which must be applied to. I have not done that myself. However, some of the current eligible entities have done that and have indirect cost rates, and that is their admin rate. We also have some of the eligible entities use a cost allocation plan that is updated every year, and that's what they use as a rationale for their admin costs. And then there is the uniform guidance allows for the de minimis rate. Currently, de minimis admin rate is 15%. So if that kind of gives you an idea, but we will recap that on that question and answer and reference those areas of uniform guidance. So we really appreciate everyone coming here today. Again, on the KHRC website, you'll find that additional information. It looked like Jessica from KCAP is willing and able to visit if anyone needs just to talk to her in general. About CSBG and the eligible entities. Overall, we've got a lot of support, community action nationwide. If you have not heard of the community action agencies or eligible entities before, I encourage you to learn more about them. Even if you choose not to apply for this RFP, they can help you make connections in many different ways and cross referrals or just work together on a project. So, all right, we will post everything by end of day tomorrow, and we do appreciate all your time here today. Thank you.